Okay. When my Uncle Stanley brought home a starter stamp collector kit one evening, my Guadeloupe postal history exhibit won the Grand Prix d'Honneur at the Washington, D.C. International Show in 2006. I've published about 125 papers and chapters on various aspects of philately. And along the way, I became a specialist in the French colonial group type, a stamp that was used by all of the French colonies from 1892 until 1915. And I do show a copy for the uninitiated of the group type stamp. It was during this odyssey that I discovered four American fraudsters who made use of the international mails to promulgate mail order fraud schemes. And I now specialize in this new philatelic area via postal and social history, as most of you already know. So today's talk, let me just remove something from my screen. Today's talk is basically based on E is for ephemera. I'm going to be talking about philately and international mail order fraud with philately aside, and I'm going to take an in-depth look at the ephemera. What is ephemera? Okay, everybody's muted, so they can't respond. I would have responded stuff. Ephemera is stuff. Okay, well, it is in a way. The official definition is ephemera are items which were not originally designed to be retained or preserved, but have been collected and retained regardless. The word is derived from the Greek ephemeros, which means lasting only one day. I never knew that before with all the ephemera I've collected, lasting but one day. I'll just mention for background the four fraud organizations that I collect. The first and today's topic is the New York Institute of Science and related companies out of Rochester, New York. You've heard of the American Institute of Mentalism before from me and the Segno Success Club. Professor Segno sold Success Waves out of Los Angeles for over 30 years. The third is the Oxypathor Company. You won't hear of me talking about that because I don't have anything French from the Oxypathor Company. And the last is the People's Institute of Health in Battle Creek, and they sold basically phony prescriptions coming out of Battle Creek. People would write in with their disease states, and the institute would cure them. I've had to put a big box around what I collect, otherwise it would become overwhelming. And it's important that, or one of my requirements is that the organizations are mostly resident in the USA during the period I collect. They have to have made use of the international mails. They were competent in most of the major European languages. They advertised internationally in local publications, and they left a strong philatelic record of their success. And finally, they were investigated by the US government agencies with respect to mail order fraud. So that has narrowed me down to the big four. And today we're going to talk about the New York Institute, or hear about the New York Institute of Science and related organizations, which for the most part operated out of Rochester, New York. The two principals, the first was E. Virgil Neal, whose nom de fraude was Xenophon Lamott Sage. He was president and creator of the scam, and his second in command was Charles S. Clark, vice president and general manager. And they're both pictured right there. This is for the non-philatelic audience, but I think the most typical question that we receive as philatelists from non-philatelists is, what is the rarest and most valuable item in your collection? Okay, people always seem to focus in on that. So I'll show you the rarest and most valuable item in this collection. Regretfully, it's not French, it's British. So you'll have to put up with a little British substance here. You see the letter is addressed to the New York Institute of Science in Rochester. The reverse of the envelope has the philatelically important parts of the cover. And what it has is a very rare rural post cancel, East End in the Grand Cayman Islands Rural Post Collection. You can see the four stamps are from the Cayman Islands, two one-penny stamps and two farthing stamps for a total rate of 2.5 pence. That was the international rate at the time. And the Cayman Islands had two types of post offices, the big general post offices, and you see the two transits, one from Bodentown and one from Georgetown. Those were the large all-service post offices. And then they had the rural posts. And these were post offices that were maybe just a desk or maybe a table. They sold stamps, they gathered outgoing mail, they collected incoming mail. And this letter to from East End to New York was actually carried from East End to Bodentown by horse and rider, and then in Bodentown it got on board a horse-drawn wagon and was carried to Georgetown, the capital, major commercial center and port in the Cayman Islands. It's one of three covers known from East End to foreign destinations. There are five or six locally directed covers, and that's all for this little village. So here's Grand Cayman Island. Here's East End. Okay, it traveled by horse and rider to Bodentown, and then it got on board the wagon to Georgetown. And here's the harbor. It was picked up by a British packet and taken on to New York and then up to Rochester. I do want to bring you something French. Rather than telling you what I paid for it, I did have to fight the Brits to gain possession of this cover. But I want to bring you some, with respect to prices, philatelic value, some words of wisdom from FCPS member Louis K. Robbins, who was a dealer in New York City. Lou always pointed out we should remember it's the dealers who make money in stamp collecting. Collectors are in it for the fun of collecting, the friendships it brings, and the travel possibilities that are part of the hobby. A direct quote from Lou that I've reproduced many times: stamps are not an investment vehicle. Possibly in bulk, you can use them as fuel. Okay, Lou is always reminding us of that. And of course, he noted your stamps will not fund the college education of your grandchildren. I did not want to leave the introduction without a French cover, French area cover. And this is one of equal rarity to the Cayman Island cover, but not price. In fact, it was unbelievably cheap. It's from Mana, French Guiana, 25 centime group type, international rate to the New York Institute of Science. In my whole group type lifetime, I've only seen two group type covers from Mana. So I think this has a very high rarity factor, but it didn't have a high purchasing factor. So what was the scam? Okay. The scam was a correspondence course in personal magnetism, hypnotism, mesmerism, magnetic healing, suggestive therapeutics, psychotherapeutics, whatever those terms might mean, by X. Lamont Sage. You could see he's president of the New York Institute of Science, formerly a professor. This course was available in all the major European languages, and the cost was $5 per copy, about $100 in today's purchasing power. Keep the factor 20 in mind as we go through some of these conversions to get current value. What would this course do for you? The course would enable one to cure disease and bad habits without drugs, win the friendship and love of others, increase one's income, wow, gratify one's ambitions, dispel worry and trouble from your mind, banish domestic unhappiness, end pain and suffering, and develop a wonderful magnetic willpower that would enable one to overcome all obstacles to one's success. Maybe that's a good value for $5. Here's page 70 of the course. There's a lesson 29 on magnetic healing. And that's particularly applicable to the Francis Colonies Philatelic Society and a good story. The first proponent of magnetic healing, magnetic medicine, was Anton Mesmer. And in 1784, 85, around there, he was promulgating magnetic medicine in Paris, selling it to all of the well-off Parisians and making a big success of it. Louis XVI, King of France at the time, had his qualms about Mesmer and his magnetic medicine. So he put together a blue ribbon panel consisting of the great French chemist Lavoisier, a group of French scientists, a group of French well-off business people, and to round out the committee, none other than Benjamin Franklin of the United States. And they investigated Mesmer for quite a few weeks. And in fact, I think it was more than a month. And they found his magnetic healing to be pure bull. Okay, and they sent him packing, and Mesmer left Paris a failure and spent the rest of his life in Germany. Yet the New York Institute of Science is very much featuring magnetic healing and magnetic medicine in their scam course. A little more on E. Virgil Neal. He had a background in hypnosis. In the 1890s, the late 1890s, he authored a book, Hypnotism as It Is. You can see by Xenophon Lamott Sage. He and his wife, Olga, put together a hypnotism act, and they played the theaters in New York State, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut. And here's an advertisement from their presence in Pittsburgh, a perfect tornado of laughter. First week, they grossed about $2,000. Doesn't seem like much till you multiply by 20, about $40,000. Second week, they got about $3,000, $60,000 in gross. And they were actually making $600 a week, which is about $12,000 in today's purchasing power. So they were doing very, very well as hypnotists. Here's the title page for the book, Hypnotism as It Is, a book for everybody. And you'll note here, since writing this treatise, Dr. Sage has been elected president of the NYYS and has prepared a well-graded logical course of 56 lessons on the subjects of hypnotism, personal magnetism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Of interest, it says this course has been sold to over 200,000 students. Were that true, okay, we've got to multiply by $5. That's $1 million. And then we've got to multiply by 20. That's a hell of a lot of money. I don't think they were making that much money at this time or had that many adherents. This was probably an over-exaggeration of their success. However, the course was guaranteed in all of the major languages. And we see copies of the guarantee in English and French, okay? The thing you noticed first is, of course, the $1,000 or the 5,000 francs that jumps off the page to you. No, they weren't guaranteeing you $1,000 or 5,000 francs. If you read the fine print, they were guaranteeing you the refund purchase price of $5 for the course itself. What happened when you completed the course? Well, at the back end of the course itself was an application for a higher course. Okay, and you could order up a higher course, and here's the higher course, appropriately named a higher course in English, or ein höherer Kursus in German. Okay, and for people who wanted more, you could order this up. Just a couple of cuts from the course in English. You could see, of course, they were selling more stuff. You could buy Sage's revolving mirror, endorsed by the largest schools of hypnotism in the world, or his hypnotic ball. And there's the title page for the course. Uh, Here's the practice of magnetic healing. Okay, you take a hypnotized subject, and the one at the left has headaches. You treat him for headaches. The one at the right has constipation. And under hypnosis, he's being treated for constipation. With my evil mind, I could not help but wonder if they had a treatment for hemorrhoids. Uh, but I won't go any further with that one. I haven't. I see Mick is shaking his head. I guess that didn't have much British subtlety, did it, Mick? Tucked into the new course is this instruction for entertainment. And among the things you could do with subjects is have them make love to a broom, eat onions for apples, ride chairs for horses, all of the entertainments that you could do with hypnosis that were very, very popular at the time, and maybe even through to today. With respect to advertising, the New York Institute of Science had ads in local papers, magazines, regular journals, regardless of language. This was worldwide. Pre-printed booklets were sent to the most promising customers. Testimonials from satisfied customers were often used for advertising. And then they had small information packages sent to potential customers responding to simple ads. And we'll take a look at some of these. Here's an unusual ad where they've put together a blue ribbon panel again and had them examine the New York Institute of Science. We have a minister, the Reverend Paul Weller. We're going to hear a bit more about him. A doctor, a successful businessman, and a judge. And all of these people examined the New York Institute of Science and wrote their responses to it. Of course, he had nothing, or they had nothing but good comments that helped advertise the overall scheme. Here's another ad. Personal magnetism, willpower, nerve force, call it what you will. The intangible power that controls human destiny. You notice Paul Weller is prominently mentioned there once again. A couple of more ads just showing the different flavors. Again, Paul Weller. An astronomical one. What is in your future? You can make or mar it as you will. Success may be yours. So, okay. It's kind of interesting advertising to catch people. They also did little newspaper like ads. These were 4 newspaper pages printed, and they would send these to potential customers. And just a couple of things to note, where you see the arrow from the day of the organization of this institution, the great work has gone forward until, at this writing, over 400,000 pupils speaking 11 languages acknowledge with gratitude their indebtedness. So they're raising the ante already up to 400,000. Again, I find that an unbelievable number. But the 11 languages, I think that's real. The other thing they claimed, which is really amazing, the credit of placing hypnotism and the occult sciences upon a footing with chemistry, physics, physiology, biology, and other departments of scientific learning. So some bold claims. Here's a picture of the New York Institute of Science in Rochester, New York. Just by chance, I took my doctorate degree in chemistry at the University of Rochester, and I spent 4 years in Rochester. And I can personally claim that there never was such a building as this in Rochester. It, like the New York Institute of Science, was a scam, okay? They showed this big, beautiful 6-story building. It actually evolved as the advertising evolved and became more and more elaborate. But they never had anything like this. It was all part of the scam. This was actually a discovery on my part, and no one who had looked into the New York Institute of Science before had really recognized this. Uh, this looks like the picture of a staff, which it is, okay, the staff of the New York Institute of Science. But if you read the caption, it's the staff in Moscow, Russia. It's about 60 people there. They're claiming to have had a staff of 60 in Moscow. It's really quite amazing. In all of my years in collecting this, I've only detected one letter or obtained one letter addressed to the New York Institute of Science at the Moscow office. It's actually known as the New York Institute of Knowledge, not Science, in Moscow. But it's a wonderful piece of postal history in that it brings up something uh, that Russia is noted for in terms of specialties, and that is that they had two types of post office and mailing systems. One was the royal mailing system, which tied together the large cities and also international destinations. And then there was a rural postal system that tied the small villages to cities to move the mails through small villages. And to frank a letter from a small village, you had to have both types of stamps. This one is from the small village mail, and this is the royal mail. This is a 2 kopeck stamp for local delivery to a larger office, and 7 kopecks for delivery to one of this is to the final larger office. This was posted in the village of Okhansk on December 5th, 1912, a Russian date, and it arrived in Moscow on the 9th. And I always like to show a map of these things. Here's where this village is, okay? Quite a distance from Moscow. It's actually by this Yekaterinburg. That's where the Tsar and his family were assassinated by the communists, I think in 1919. Uh, from the little village, it went south to the Trans-Siberian Railway, which connected into Moscow. That was the larger national postage, and then they could go on into Europe and overseas. One thing I would mention, I'm a member of a local Zoom club in New York City, the New York International Stamp Club. We meet every Saturday at 10 a.m. and anybody can discuss anything. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had a new member join from St. Petersburg who speaks perfect Russian, perfect English, and I have him on the search now for more information on the New York Institute of Science or Knowledge, as it's called in Russia, to see what he can come up with. And I was in contact with him the other day, and he said he's putting together a very nice package, in addition to looking for more Russian covers, which there should be for my collection. Testimonials galore we used for advertising, the same newspaper-like handouts. I won't go through them. They're all very successful looking people. I particularly like this one here, which shows H.C. Pierce, champion legless skater of the world, meets with wonderful success, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A legless skater. When you completed the course, you would do a graduation credential, or as we would call it, a diploma. The diploma measures 22 by 28 inches. I've yet to encounter one. I would love to do it. I should mention that my undergraduate diploma measures about 7 by 10 inches for comparison. Not much. Just an interesting little tidbit. Another thing that caught my attention in this, they have a note to foreign correspondents. Those living outside the United States and Canada, remember this is around 1910, should send money by international post office money order, bank draft, or notes of the country, of their country, securely sealed and registered. I don't know about you guys, but I had a lot of trouble in the 70s, 80s, and 90s paying overseas bills, okay? If you had a $200 bill due in France and you wanted to do a wire transfer, my bank charged $45 for the wire transfer, which was a hell of a premium on a $200 bill. Well, the New York Institute of Science solved this way back in 1910. Just use the currency of your home country. Our bank takes care of it for us. How about that? Here's an ad for an unusual book that they produced called The Philosophy of Personal Influence. And you could write especially for this, and they reserved it for the most serious customers. And I just happened to have a copy of that booklet in French. Okay. It's a beautifully done booklet and all about their scam and how they work it. On the right is an envelope specifically designed for mailing of that booklet. It's got a 3-cent Jackson stamp from the 1902 U.S. series. It's a very, very rare stamp to get singly used on a cover. And here's an example of it. It was torn during opening, but the 1902 series collectors say that's not important because of the rarity of the item. So it's just a nice pair. Inside, I opened to page, whatever that is, 62. There's a big ad for the correspondence course, and then a little bit of hypnotism. And we have the standard hypnosis trick of making the subject go stiff and then putting him between two ends. Often it's two chairs. Here it's two sawhorses. And then really to create a unusual situation, they put a board on top of him and a horse on top of the board. Uh, I have the feeling this is 1910 Photoshop, but I can't be sure about that. I've seen people put under hypnosis and they become stiff as boards. And when non-hypnotized people try and do this layout, they can't do it. Okay, you have to be hypnotized to do it. So one of the questions I'm very, very frequently asked is, where was the New York Institute of Science in most successful? And forgetting about the United States, simply because the U.S. mail is not a measure of success because it wasn't sold to the philatelic trade. Uh, you might think England or maybe France or maybe Italy, something like that. Well, no, it turns out the most successful country was the Hungarian portion of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Just this week, I entered cover number 157 into my collection. And also, I've been able to get by dabbing in Hungarian auctions. I don't read a word of Hungarian, yet I can bid. Here's the ad booklet prepared for the Hungarian market. And I would mention now the New York Institute of Science sold its incoming foreign mail to the U.S. philatelic trade. That's very clear. The other thing that's very clear is more than 90% of the mail to the New York Institute of Science and the other fraud organizations is from small towns and villages, not the big cities. The New York Institute of Science received and sent thousands of letters every day. I might say that they sent between 5 and 10,000, pardon me, a day. I mean, they were a major operation for the post offices. We know that Professor Segno sent 6 to 7,000 a day because we have the Postmaster General's letter that actually records that from the Los Angeles Post Office. I just wanted to show you a typical Hungarian cover. It's from a village that I dare not pronounce. Maybe somebody in the audience speaks Hungarian. It turns out this little village is in the heart of Transylvania, of all places. It's a proper 50 filler registered rate. It contained some monetary vehicle, probably Hungarian cash, for purchase of a New York Institute of Science product. And it's got a nice via Zapost Bremen, New York transit marking indicating that it came from Bremen across the Atlantic Ocean. This has gotten me into thinking about Hungary, and maybe I wish I discovered this, 40 years ago. I might have gotten seriously interested in Hungary. Before the end of World War I, all of the entities shown in this map were part of the Hungarian portion of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. After World War I, the center section, okay, which is right in here, that is more or less Hungary today. This portion was given over to Romania. That's where that little Transylvanian village is. This portion was delivered over to Yugoslavia. That included Serbia, Croatia, a little bit of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and the city of Fiume, which went to Italy. And then there was a big section that was attached to the Slavic countries up north. So Hungary is a very, very unusual and interesting place. And I guesstimate it had about 4,000 little villages that I can chase after for postal material. I was so taken by this success in Hungary that I actually wrote a whole 18-page chapter on it for the annual of the European Academy of Philately. This is from the 2018 edition. And if anybody has any interest in reading this, just Google Grabowski, Hungary, and Institute and Science. It's on the website of the Hungarian Philatelic Society of the United States. They let me put it up there. Just a few more pages from the Hungarian booklet. You see at the bottom left, they're selling a hypnotic ball. There's somebody applying the hypnotic ball. And they're also selling the hypnodisc. Okay, those are the only Hungarian words, so-called, that I can read. The rest I'm totally mute on. The New York Institute of Science also did a special volume entitled Hypnotism and Hypnotic Suggestion that had contributions from 30 authors. Each author did a chapter. Neal and Clark were the editors and contributors. Chapters were written by many experts in the field, including many doctors and professors. These were not scammers, but true professionals, and they probably got a small honorarium. And these books were sold in all of the major languages, and to make their purchase easier, they were also sold in a 6-section set. Here's the title page of the English version of the book and the German version. There's a little interesting story right here. Can everybody read that signature? Everybody read German? It says Johann Siebenhaar. Can you translate Siebenhaar? It translates to 7 hairs. That's a weirdo name. So I had to Google it. As a chemist, I studied German. I studied a lot of German. I never came across a last name, Siebenhaar. Well, it turns out that's the German word for a bald guy. Okay, the Germans were trying to be accurate, as they often do, and they figured if you were bald, you probably had a few hairs. So they gave those few hairs the name 7 hairs. Okay, and that's an actual genuine German last name that is one of their words for someone who's bald. I just love it. Here's the first of the 6-set selection. You see it says number 1 tile, first part. And as I said, you could buy it over 6 volumes so you could afford it. Remember, this was a lot of money. And here's an introductory page on the scientific value of hypnosis by one J. Mark Baldwin, Doctor of Philosophy, Princeton University. So people with very, very good credits were contributing to this. Finally, the informational packages, the simple responses to little ads, was sent in 11 languages. The one at the right is French, okay, just to show you something again in French. And on the left is the staff of the New York Institute of Science. You see Sage, you see Clark, and if you go down here a little bit, you see Sage's wife, Olga, who was an instructor in the theory and practice of hypnotism and suggestion in the development of mental faculties and the correction of evil habits. What a title. But the important thing is this list of managers for each of the areas of the world. Paul Weller was, in fact, a general manager. These were all the people supposedly reporting to him. And they covered every language: English, French, German, Spanish, that includes Central and South America, the lowlands, Portugal, Italy, Russia, Hungary, Sweden, and Japan. And if you take this group of countries plus all of their colonies, you pretty well encompass the world. The world was available for this scam. That's one of the most amazing things. The other thing about the New York Institute of Science, it was so successful that they created a number of new scams. Among them were the Cartilage Company under K. Leo Mingus, the Institute of Radiopathy under G.A. Mann, a scam for the ladies under May Edna Wild, the Ocala Laboratory, which treated diseases of the eye under Dr. Koresh. There was also the New York State Publishing Company, which we've seen a bit of. That was the publishing arm of the scam. And then there was the commercial correspondence schools, as close to actually real as a scam could be. So I just show you a little bit about the Cartilage Company here. Here's a letter, unfortunately not French, but British. The French is coming. And it's a 4.5 penny registered letter from the little village of Alba, again, a little village, through the main town and actually now county of Opobo, via London to New York and then on to Rochester. Very, very nice piece of postal history. And when you look at this, you find that the legendary King Yaya of Nigeria, this is southern Nigeria, was actually the founder of Opobo, which was originally a city and became a county in Nigeria. K. Leo Menges had no background in science or medicine. He developed initially a course in physical culture for the New York Institute of Science: exercise, diet, good living, all the stuff you find popular today. But this had little potential for growth, so he had to come up with another idea. And the scam was a device based on the rack of the Inquisition that was guaranteed to increase your height by 1 to 5 inches for only $20, about $400 in today's purchasing power. And I do have the original or copy of the German patent. This is from the German Patent Office, where you can see this device that grew yourself tall. It's a harness that went under your arms, a device that went under your chin around the back of your neck, hooked to ropes and pulleys and a mount in the ceiling. Your feet were hooked to the floor and tied to a gauge, and you would yank on these pulleys and stretch your back and your neck bones. And here we have a picture of Mingus working in his laboratory. He's actually got backbones in his hand there. If you blew up the picture, you can see it. And here's a picture of the actual rack from the Spanish Inquisition. And you see what's being done to the poor racky, I guess you could call him. I should note this is the method that the Catholic Church used to convert aberrant Protestants and Jews to Catholicism. So religious conversion was much more difficult back in the 16th century. Here's some advertising, and you see the poor short fellow who's got a little bit of an interest in this tall, beautiful young lady, but is not succeeding. Then there's Mingus, now raised to Professor K. Leo Mingus. We have no documentation on his professorship. This scam was so successful that they opened an office in Paris. And here's one of the letters of introduction from the cartilage company in Paris to a Spanish speaking client. This could have been in Spain or Central or South America. I don't know. But look at the address, number 7, Avenue de la Opera. Wow. That's pretty good territory, okay? These guys weren't fooling around. They're not out in some obscure Paris arrondissement. They're right in the thick of it on Avenue de la Opera at the southern end of course, what is at the northern end, the famous Opera House in Paris. And here's one of the printed matter envelopes that we used to send these small informational packages out. You can see it has KLM for K. Leo Mingus, number 7, and it's at the proper 5 centime printed matter rate, which covered printed matter up to 50 grams, which is about 2 ounces. Here's the info booklet with an order form in French, okay, to bring in another French element into the talk. Here's the instruction book for the device in Italian. And here's a typical information package. This one sent to a potential client of the Japanese market. And this was kind of neat. This was an eBay item listed as printed matter rate 1 cent from Rochester, 1908 to Tokyo with contents. And that's all it said. I had no way of knowing whether this box 786 was part of anything with the New York Institute of Science, the institute itself or the cartilage company or something else. I didn't write to the seller or email the seller and ask for more details on the contents. I just bid very conservatively, and when I got it, I opened it up, and there's the letter of introduction, only now to the Japanese market. Okay, and you see here K. Leo Mingus, his printed signature, the Alliance Bank of Rochester, where you can send your drafts and checks. So very, very interesting. I got a Japanese informational package. And it even has a last chance message. I thought this was a new idea. We get them regularly with nonsense advertising. And this basically says in Japanese, you've already read our information and you're not convinced. Read this and maybe this will convince you. And they include a pre-printed envelope to mail back to Rochester or Paris, as normally the case. And somehow I was able to come up with the instruction book for the Japanese market. Grow yourself tall is what that says. A little ad for the German market via Gross Wurde, How I Became Tall. You can see it's to the cartilage company at number 7. This was a scam within a scam, the magnetic exerciser, a wonderful invention. No one knew about this before. Startling results obtained through use of the cartilage magnetic exerciser. I can't get all of this on one slide. It was a box with pulleys, ropes, weights, and magnets, okay? And it was $10. Mr. Mingus has, for the past 6 months, been making experiments with the cartilage magnetic exerciser and has come to the conclusion that by following these exercises, the muscles and cartilages become more pliable, which makes it easier for the regular grow tall apparatus to do its work. If you can purchase one of these for $10, the regular cartilage device is $20, so you're into them for $30. And by the time you multiply it out, it's like $600 that you're spending in today's purchasing power. Here's the Institute of Radiopathy under Man. Some very nice pieces of postal history, one from Puerto Rico from a little village, Vejabaya, and one from a little village of Rio Grande. This one is actually in the collection of Nick Lombardi, who's got a whole exhibit, I'm sure Ken knows it very well, on the 2-cent shield issue. And this is in Nick's collection, and damn it, he won't sell it to me. no matter how hard I tried. Uh, the scam was radiopathy was a hodgepodge of everything, and it basically cured, all diseases, a natural method for the curing of all diseases that man had created. There's a German ad for man, where does this wonderful power come from? The whole country is amazed at the wonderful deeds that Mr. Man brings. And here's man lecturing to the French medical establishment on radiopathy. And as a chemist, I was very intrigued that he brought his chemistry set along with him. Here's a nice cover from Two Man at the Radiopathy Institute in Rochester. It's from a little village in France. It was underpaid by 5 centimes and correctly treated with a T in triangle, a crayon 0,05 for 5 centimes due. And when it arrived in New York, they doubled that to 10 centimes and collected it as 2 cents US due in Rochester on arrival. Here's one that makes me sick every time I look at it. Man operated out of Rochester from 1908 to 11. The post office was after him regarding mail order fraud, and he decided to relocate to Paris. He affiliated himself with he was actually French Canadian. He affiliated himself with the International Library of the New Press, which handled all of his printing activities in Paris. And what we have here is an exceptional letter franked with a 10 centime Sower military franchise stamp posted from the French Indochinese office of Chongqing on February 20th, 1914. Philatelically, this is one of the most significant covers in the whole damn fraud collection. Unfortunately, I did not become aware of the association of man with the Paris operation until after I sold the group type collection, of which this cover was part of. So I sold this cover, this beautiful cover, away. You can see the Chongqing hand stamp, the 10 centime Sower can that I had mentioned, overprinted FM, and then the cachet of the Marine unit, and via Siberia, that big Trans-Siberian Railroad that went through Russia. Just an absolutely marvelous cover. And blah, I gave it away. I sold it. I didn't even look up what I sold it for. May Edna Wilder, she ran a scam for the ladies, and these are 2 due letters, one from Mandalay, Burma, showing use of Indian stamps, underpaid at 1 anna in lieu of a 2 anna rate, properly marked with 30 centimes due, a T in triangle, 6 cents US due. One from Santiago, Chile, prepaid at 5 centavos with no additional postage. So it's 33 French centimes due, T here, and collect 7 cents. You very rarely ever see the collect 7 cents rate on these letters. And the scam was How I Developed My Bust and Removed My Wrinkles by May Edna Wild, specifically for the ladies. You can see wrinkle removal here. Introductory paragraph, the bust can be developed by as much as 6 inches, and then something about wrinkles. Here's the very fashionable May Edna Wilder. We've got testimonials from a chemist and a physician supporting her scam. Time required to develop the bust and remove wrinkles. Everything's guaranteed, of course. She also did a weight loss program that was advertised. And that's the end of May Edna Wilder. There was the Ocala Company. This one, the scam was treatment of diseases of the eyes, and it ran from 1911 to 14 and realized about $100,000 per year, which is about $2 million in today's purchasing power. Koresh led it, as you can see. Treatments revolved around standard eye washes, boric acid, sodium bicarbonate. And this is the only cover I've ever seen from the scam. And it's from Karachi, Pakistan now, underfranked at 1 anna with the same due system, 30 centimes do translates to 6 cents. Um, the New York State Publishing Company. This is an interesting one. I mentioned in the Hungarian map, Fiume. Here's a letter from Fiume under Hungarian administration, properly registered. Another German packet marked from Bremen. Uh, and of course, I noted Fiume was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1912 when this originated and was transferred to Italy after the war. The New York State Publishing Company sold all sorts of books on relating to the occult sciences and any of the New York Institute of Science scams. You can see here, Hypnotism as It Is by Xenophon Lamott Sage. They were now selling it at a reduced rate of 50 cents. Here's a nice example from the commercial correspondence schools and addressed to Rochester, New York, from a little village in Brazil via New York City and on to Rochester. A nice piece of postal history. And the scam was, well, you see, this is a commercial correspondence schools. These were correspondence courses in banking and finance. It was actually an 8-component course. You had to buy 8 different booklets on books on accounting and banking based on a book that E. Virgil Neal wrote in his early life on banking and accounting. That's what he was teaching in Missouri. Uh, there is no existent evidence that this course successfully competed with real business schools in getting students into business jobs, into banking jobs. The closest scam I can come to this one, the closest modern scam, is, of course, Trump University. If you look at Trump University, which taught real estate, they were doing very much the same thing. Here's that book by Neal, Modern Illustrative Bookkeeping, a great ad, Let Me Train Your Boy for Business. And then the 8 courses you had to buy to complete the whole course. And we, of course, saw the one, I showed you the one, it's actually in penmanship. So what happened to the New York Institute of Science? The principals, except for Lamott Sage, were arrested in November 1914, denied the use of the mails, and the New York Institute of Science was closed. But Lamott Sage began to separate himself from the NYIS in 1907 and sought other adventures. Thus, he was not prosecuted, though he's mentioned here, you can see that. He was not prosecuted with the other members of the New York Institute of Science. What did he do? Well, it turns out there's a whole book on Xenophon Lamott Sage, aka E. Virgil Neal, that I call The New Adventures of E. Virgil Neal. And they are detailed in a book by Professor Mary Schaefer Conroy. Mary is a professor of Russian, professor emeritus of Russian history and the Russian language at the University of Colorado, Denver. And she's done a 400-page biography on Neal and his whole life. I've come along and, of course, read with most interest the chapter on the New York Institute of Science, sent her a lot of new information, a lot of scans of exciting and interesting covers, and she's put out a 3rd edition of her book and updated the chapter on the New York Institute of Science with a lot of the stuff I've given her. So what is the subsequent career of Sage? In 1907 to 8, he begins to separate himself from the New York Institute of Science, but his name remains prominent on most of their products because it was one of the selling points. Sage founds the Tokalan Company that specializes in perfumes and cosmetics. He moves to Nice, France, becomes a prominent citizen and a rich citizen, and a most successful businessman. But he continues activities in the United States by selling nuxated iron, an iron supplement laced with strychnine, out of an office in New York City. It's like 1 block from the Collectors Club. And he also remembers the good old days at the New York Institute of Science. Here's an ad for Tokalon, a guarantee against wrinkles. We're back at wrinkles. And you can see Tokalon cream is being advertised. Tokalon powder is someplace in here. Okay. Where's this stuff being sold? It's at the department store du Printemps. That's the Bloomingdale's, the Nordstrom, the one of the biggest department stores in France. Where are his offices for Tokalon? Number 7 Rue Aubert. Have any of you guys been to number 7 Rue Aubert? Mick, how about you? You can just nod your head or no. No, I see no from Mick. Oh, I've been to number 7 Rue Aubert many, many times. It turns out it's loaded. It's loaded with companies that sell perfume and makeup. Okay, but they sell it duty free. So every time my wife and I would make a trip to Paris, there was a mandatory trip at number 7 Rue Aubert so she could restock on French perfume. This is the department store du Printemps from 1910. You can sense it's a cousin of the Eiffel Tower, at least to me, when I look at the design of the department store. Here's a Tokalon float in a little French village, a parade from a little French village. You can see they're pushing Tokalon powder. Here's a Tokalon check. I still consider this ephemera. Those are not posted. That's not a postage stamp. It's a tax stamp. But despite his financial success, Sage still harkens back to the good old times at the New York Institute of Science. While in France, he reestablishes the old New York Institute of Science hypnotism fraud scam in Paris at a place called the Sage Institute in the 8th arrondissement. Okay, Paris 8th. This guy didn't fool around. I mean, he went, to the best places. He got his offices in the best places. And this is it's the same correspondence course, okay? But look at the price. It's now $25 or 5 guineas. Look at the date, copyright 1923. And 1923, he's selling the old correspondence course out of the Paris office at a $25 price. I mean, this guy was absolutely amazing. Part of the ephemera in my collection are these 2 bottles of nuxated iron. Okay. He was selling these out of New York City. This was an iron supplement tablet laced with strychnine, but not enough to kill his clients. He brought his best marketing skills to this endeavor. You can see this one is still in its original wrapping. This one, the outer wrapping's been removed, but it's still filled with nuxated iron tablets in case I ever want to take one. Who did he bring on board to help advertise? Well, none other than Jack Dempsey and Ty Cobb, 2 of the greatest people in sports that America has ever produced. And this is the Dempsey ad that he put together for newspapers, plus my Dempsey button. There's also one for Ty Cobb. But these guys knew no bounds, okay? They sent a sample of nuxated iron, and you can just about read it here, to the director of the pharmacy of the Vatican for analysis by the Vatican Pharmaceutical Laboratory. And they came back with good vibes, good letters on the value and the importance of nuxated iron, so much so that these guys created an ad that featured none other than the Pope. Okay, so they had the Pope shilling for them on the nuxated iron. So that's the end of my tale, pretty much on time. But I've come across the ultimate item of ephemera that's available on the market today, and that's Neil's Villa. Okay, Ross, I'm back. Can people hear me now?
Thanks. I don't what button I push. You're back.
Okay, well, the last thing was the ultimate in ephemera. Pardon me, Virgil Neal's villa in Nice, in the suburbs of Nice, up on the hillside, looking down on the city. That's available on the real estate market, and oh boy, if I could buy that, then I can invite all of you to Nice for a meeting instead of a Zoom meeting, and we could have a great time in Nice and really show some ephemera. So that's it. That's the talk that I prepared for my class. I hope you've enjoyed it. I would like to hear a lot of comments, questions. Join in and let me know what you think. Russ,
So, how do I unmute everybody?
everybody can unmute themselves, I believe.
Okay, yes, that's what it
I
says
see
here.
Tom has
Yes.
unmuted himself. Tom, you're here?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Ed, thanks so much for this. I, of course, was introduced to your interest in these fraudsters a few years ago when you submitted several one-page exhibits to the American Topical
Oh, yeah.
Association's
Yeah.
one-page exhibit program, and those are still available online. And I encourage people to go and look at what Ed did, uh, how he was able to put a lot of fascinating information into a single page. But also, I'm doing this as a plug for ATA's My One Page Exhibit program. It is an online program. Since its inception, we're about to go into the fifth year. We've had almost a total of almost 1,000 exhibits, and from all over the world. And would love to have some more by Ed, and would like to have some from some of the rest of you. And then I guess that Donald Trump probably could have learned some tricks from these fraudsters.
Well, I was just hearing about Trump watches today.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
man,
No.
they come from China, not Zurich, China.
Right.
And he said there's 200 grams of gold in it.
Yeah, that's hard.
200 grams.
Yeah, I know.
It's damn near half a pound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fool's gold.
So I just following up on Tom's comments, I support this idea of one-page exhibits 1,000%. I mean, I put in 8 of them to 20, I think it's 2022, and I had a phenomenal response from people who looked at them, all sorts of comments, and I actually found out some new information too. So it paid off in more ways than you could imagine. Whoever had the idea, it was a grand idea.
You can go to the ATA website to view, and also we will be launching submissions December 15th. And a friend of mine from our Knoxville Club and I are the two who have been in charge of it from the beginning, and it is a lot of fun to see these.
Ed, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
These fraudsters, you said they were investigated by the post office department. Did any of them serve time or have to pay any kind
The New York Institute of Science guys, I do not know. They were definitely put out of business in November 1914. I have seen no information saying whether they were incarcerated. Elvard Moses, who created the Oxypathor medical device scam, was actually tried for mail order fraud and other crimes and sentenced to I think it was 14 months in Atlanta prison for his crime, Atlanta federal prison, and he served 8 months and then was let go on good behavior. And never heard of since, but I did get a letter from his nephew as a result of the ATA one framer. And when Moses retired or from the Atlanta Federal Prison, he came back to Buffalo and just finished out his life very quietly. But he had sold 45,500 oxypathors at $35, $19, $10 each. So he may have laid up a pretty good bank account to carry him through those years.
Thank you.
So anybody have any comments? How's this going to go over with a bunch of scientists and engineers?
Could I just ask one question of you, Ed? This French character, Mesmer.
Yes, sir. No, he's German.
Oh, German, beg your pardon.
Maybe Austrian, actually.
Ah,
But
okay.
he retired to Germany.
Right. Now, I've never heard of him before, but I'm assuming that his
Yes,
name
mesmerized.
is exactly. I was going to
That's
say.
the origin of it. You look it up.
Yep. That's what I was thinking. I had to check it in my dictionary, but it didn't give me any. Didn't give me the root of the verb. But
Yeah, you do Wikipedia on it. You get it.
Yeah.
You get it. But that's what Mesmer has left us with. Mesmerize. Yes, still very valid today.
Absolutely.
So
I think one of my big questions is, and maybe from your classmates, is Ed, where do you find all of these things? I can understand the philatelic ones.
No, you know what's the greatest thing that happened is I became aware of Professor Segno just when the web was beginning to come online, as they say. And it's the web that has enabled, I search everybody. I can search the Hungarian auctions because I search them by year, so I don't have to know Hungarian, and I know the little symbol for search. So I can look for material all over the world. I haven't been able to get anything from Russia because I don't think we have ready access to the Russian websites. But this new fellow collector that I've come across in St. Petersburg is going to provide that very thing, and I'm hoping to be able to get a whole bunch of new stuff relating to the Russian office because it was big. We know it was big now, so there's got to be a lot. There's got to be a lot there, and this is really great to have a collector friend in Russia now. Holy gee! Got to remember, my name is Grabowski. That's Polish in origin, and the Russians donated a big business building to the Poles in Warsaw. If you look at the Warsaw skyline, there's this huge 60-story building that's absolutely ugly and stands very, very tall and thin. It was a gift from the Russian people to the Polish people. Okay, I learned this when I was in Poland in 2002, and the Poles call it Stalin's penis. Okay, the Poles don't like the Russians. This is. I saw this when they had the European Cup that was centered in Poland and the Ukraine. There's a sense the Poles have forgiven the Germans for what happened during World War II, but they've not forgiven the Russians for any of the interactions between Poland and Russia from the latter part of World War II right until the fall of the Soviet Union when Poland got a little bit of freedom. So yeah, you get into all sorts of nonsense with this nonsense. So anybody out there an engineer or a scientist? Nobody. Oh gosh. Oh,
There's a
okay.
couple.
How are engineers and scientists going to look upon this talk? Is it going to be interesting?
Oh, I think
yeah.
definitely.
Definitely fascinating. Yes.
Okay, this is a pretty serious bunch, and we were talking at a previous meeting about Robert Oppenheimer and the atomic bombs, and one of the guys in my class actually knew Oppenheimer and knew a number of the people involved in the project in Los Alamos, and just had all sorts of wonderful stories, unusual stories to tell about those people and their interactions. You know, you had some of the biggest heads in the world banging heads in that project, and so some of the discussions have been pretty serious. This one's not going to be that serious. All right. Well, this
I
gives
would
me
expect
some,
engineers to be very skeptical.
uh,
I think people are gonna be amazed at how gullible the world's population is.
well,
And still are.
And they
I
still are,
Yes.
yeah.
yeah, I put a slide in this talk that I took out to show how gullible we are as a species. Okay, and no, I wasn't going after Trump again, but I went after Linus Pauling, the Nobel laureate in chemistry.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
You know his story. I mean, he got 2 Nobel Prizes, one for fantastic, phenomenal contributions to chemistry, and one for contributions to world peace. I mean, this is serious stuff. Yet Pauling believed that vitamin C cured colds, and he had so much influence that he had all sorts of people, including scientists and engineers, gobbling their 1 gram of vitamin C every day to ward off colds.